My name is Magdalena Nowak, though everyone here in Toronto calls me Magda, and I was 44 years old when my marriage nearly fell apart over 11 years of bank statements I never asked to see. I came to Canada from Krakow when I was 26 with 2 suitcases, a diploma in accounting that nobody wanted to recognize, and a heart full of the kind of hope that only young immigrants carry, the kind that makes you believe that hard work alone can fix anything. By the time the story starts, I had been married to my husband Thomas for 16 years. We had a daughter named Zosha, who was 14 and already taller than me. And I thought, foolishly, that after everything we had built together, there were no more surprises left between us. I was wrong, and the truth is, so was he. It started on a Tuesday evening in October, the kind of ordinary evening where nothing seems like it could ever change. I was doing the household budget, something I had done every month since we got married, because numbers calm me, they always have, ever since I was a little girl, helping my father count coins from his shoe repair shop in Poland. I opened our joint banking app to reconcile the accounts, and I noticed a transfer I didn't recognize. $400 sent to an account under the name K. Reyes on the 15th of the month, just like every month before it, going back as far as the records would show me, which was about 2 years on the app, though something in my gut told me it went back further than that. I sat there at the kitchen table for a long time, just staring at that name. K. Reyes. I didn't know anyone named Reyes. Thomas didn't know anyone named Reyes, as far as I was aware. We had been married 16 years, and I thought I knew every person who mattered in his life. His co-workers at the engineering firm, his old college friends, his sister in Vancouver. There was no K. Reyes anywhere in that picture. I want to tell you that I confronted him calmly, like a mature woman who trusts her husband. I did not. I sat in the dark kitchen with my laptop glowing in front of me, and I felt something cold spread through my chest, the particular coldness of betrayal, even before I had any proof of what kind of betrayal it was. My mind went to the worst place immediately, the way minds do at 11 at night when you are alone with a discovery you didn't ask for. I thought of another woman. I thought of years of lies. I thought about how many hundreds of times $400 would add up to, and I actually did the math because that's who I am, and the number that came back to me made my hands shake. When Thomas came home from his business trip to Calgary 2 days later, I had already rehearsed what I would say 100 times, and every version fell apart the moment I heard his key in the door. He walked in tired, loosening his tie, and he kissed my forehead like he did every single day. And I just looked at him and said, "Who is K. Reyes?" His face changed. Not into guilt exactly, but into something worse, something like fear. Like a man who has been waiting 16 years for a question he hoped would never come. "Magda, sit down," he said, and I said, "I am sitting down. Thomas, I've been sitting here for 2 days, wondering who you've been sending money to every single month since before I even knew about it." He didn't deny it. That's what I remember most, the way he didn't even try to lie. He just sat down across from me at our kitchen table, the same table where our daughter did her homework every night, and he put his head in his hands and said, "Her name is Karen Reyes. She's not who you think she is." "Then tell me who she is," I said. And my voice came out sharper than I meant it to, sharp enough that I heard our daughter's footsteps pause upstairs, and I lowered it, because whatever was about to happen, I didn't want Zosha hearing it through the floorboards. Thomas took a breath, the kind of breath a person takes before they jump into cold water, and he said, "She's my daughter's mother. I want you to understand, in that moment, I felt the floor of my entire life tilt sideways. 16 years of marriage, and I had never once heard him mention a daughter. We had built our whole life on the story that Zosha was his first child, his only child, the miracle we had after 3 years of trying and one heartbreaking miscarriage before her. And now, at 44 years old, sitting in my own kitchen, I was learning that my husband had a daughter I never knew existed. "Explain," I said, and that one word came out of me like a blade. He told me the story slowly, painfully, like a man pulling something out of himself that had been buried so deep it had grown roots. When he was 22, before he ever met me, before he even moved to Toronto, he had a girlfriend named Karen in Winnipeg, where he grew up. They were young and reckless, and she got pregnant, and he panicked, the way young men sometimes panic. And instead of stepping up, he ran. He told her he wasn't ready. He told his own parents nothing. And he moved across the country for a job that he mostly took as an excuse to disappear. Karen kept the baby, a daughter. She named her Isabella. For years, Thomas told himself it wasn't his responsibility, that Karen had chosen to keep the baby without him, that he had offered to pay for an abortion, and she'd refused. So somehow in his young and cowardly mind, that made her choice, not his. He carried that justification for almost a decade, he said, until Isabella turned 9 years old and wrote him a letter, one that Karen had helped her find his address to send. And in that letter, a 9-year-old girl asked her father why he had never wanted to meet her. I couldn't read it twice, Thomas said, his eyes wet in a way I had rarely seen in 16 years of marriage. I read it once, and I knew I had spent 9 years being a coward, and I decided I couldn't keep doing that to her, even if I couldn't undo what I'd already done. So he started sending money, quietly, secretly, $400 a month, sometimes more around her birthday or Christmas, and eventually he started visiting her twice a year, always on business trips he never fully explained to me, trips to Winnipeg that I thought were about client meetings. He built a relationship with a daughter he had abandoned in secret for over a decade, while building an entirely different family with me in Toronto, and never once told me the truth. 16 years, Thomas, I said, and my voice cracked on his name. 16 years, and you let me believe Zosha was your only child. You let her grow up not knowing she has a sister. I was ashamed, he said. Every year that passed, it got harder to tell you, because the longer I waited, the worse the lie looked. I told myself I'd tell you eventually, when the time was right, and then eventually became never. And I hated myself for it. Magda, I promise you, I hated myself. Every single month I sent that money and said nothing. I would like to tell you that I understood immediately, that I was gracious and calm, the way people are in movies when they discover a secret. This large, I was not. I screamed at him that night in a way I had never screamed at anyone in my life. And I said things I'm not proud of, things about trust and cowardice, and how a man who could hide a whole child for 16 years could hide anything, could be hiding other things right now. And how was I supposed to believe a single word he ever told me again? He didn't fight back. He just sat there and let me say it all. And when I finally ran out of breath, he said quietly, "You're right to be angry. I don't have a defense. I just have the truth, finally. And I know it's 16 years too late." I didn't sleep in our bedroom that night. I slept on the couch with my phone in my hand, scrolling through nothing, feeling like a stranger in my own house. And it was there, alone in the dark at 2 a.m, that the second earthquake of my life hit me. Not from Thomas, but from inside myself. From a memory I had buried so deep, I had almost convinced myself it belonged to someone else. Because the truth is, I understood exactly what it felt like to hide a child. I understood it better than Thomas ever could, because I had been hiding one for 22 years. When I was 20 years old, still living in Krakow, before I ever dreamed of Canada, I fell in love with a boy named Marek, a boy my parents did not approve of, because his family had less money than mine and because he wanted to be a musician instead of anything practical. I got pregnant at 20. And instead of the shame falling on Marek in the world I grew up in, it fell entirely on me. My mother told me if I kept the baby, I would ruin my life and hers along with it, that no decent man would ever want me afterward, that I would spend my whole life explaining a mistake instead of living a future. I was young and frightened, and I did not have the strength my daughter has now, the strength I see in Zosha when she stands up to unfairness. I gave my son up for adoption through a Catholic agency in Krakow 3 days after he was born. I named him Tomasz, after my grandfather, though I never got to choose his name after the adoption, since the new family renamed him whatever they wished. I held him for exactly 1 hour before they took him, and I have thought about that hour nearly every single day for 22 years. I never told Thomas. Not when we met at a language exchange event in Toronto when I was 26. Not when we got engaged, not when we got married, not through 16 years and 1 daughter and every ordinary Tuesday of our life together. I told myself the same lie Thomas had told himself.